Hey there, and welcome to exercise number 65. In this one, we need to write a function named fetchClosedPullRequests that receives two parameters. The first one is called username and is, you guessed it, the username of a GitHub user. And the second parameter is the name of a public repository owned by the user above. And we're going to call this parameter repo. The function should return a promise that resolves to an array with the IDs of all closed pull requests from that repo. Now, if the username or repo doesn't exist, the return promise should resolve to an empty array. And I also added a short note saying, here's the link to the GitHub API, and it's your job, in this case my job, to find the correct endpoint to call. Below we have an example. So if the username of the GitHub user is this one and the repo is this one, then the output should be a promise that resolves with the values below. The value below. And this is an array with, here it only has 8 values, but actually it's like more than 200, and I didn't want to add all of them here. But those are the IDs of all closed pull requests in this repo. Now, if you want to solve this exercise for yourself, which I highly encourage you to do, then click on the link in the description. If not, keep watching and we're going to solve it together. Now, the first thing I want to do before writing code is I want to figure out which API we need to call and how we need to call them. So let's go on this URL here, and we're on the GitHub API. And I'm going to go here on the left side. I think we need to go to pull requests, because we care about the closed pull requests. So let's go here and let's look here. Okay, list pull requests. This seems to be working. And here we can see we have the endpoint, API, github.com, repos, owner, repo, and then we get pulls. And here it says something about authorization, but I think because this is a public repo, we don't need it. And free for organization. Yeah, so I think we don't need to put the authorization. And this is the first thing I want to test. Let me just do this. And I'm going to paste. And then let me just take this one. And I'm going to put it here. And let me take this one. And I'm going to put it here. And let's remove the quotes. And yeah, we get some pull requests, and you can see we have the IDs, we have some other information, but this is what we care about, those IDs. But we also care only about the closed pull requests. So let's see how do we do that. So I'm gonna go here and okay, parameters, headers, query param, state. Oh, there you go. So we have this state, either open, closed, or all. Default is open, can be one of those. So let me just do here, and I'm gonna go state is closed. And now we get 30 closed pull requests. So that's pretty good. Now, we also had another function regarding the GitHub API. So I remember we need to do some pagination. And if I remember properly, yeah, you can see here we have a per page, maximum 100, and it defaults to 30. And then we have a page that starts at 1. So we're going to need to take this into consideration, right? We're going to need to build the function in such a way that it handles pagination. Now, the first thing I want to do is, let's go back into the code. So I'm actually going to create a new function, and I'm going to say, let's say, fetch page of closed pull requests. Actually, let's just say fetch page, because it's too long. And we know we're in the fetch closed pull requests. So this one is going to get a username, and it's going to get a repo, and it's going to get a page, and it's going to get a per page. So now the URL, it's going to be this one. So let me just make this bigger. So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to use the fetch API. So I'm going to do resp is await fetch of, and this is the URL. And here I'm going to do username. Here I'm going to do repo. And I'm going to say closed, and I'm going to say page is equal to page, and per page is equal to per page. And let's not forget to put an async here before. So we get the response, and then I'm going to convert it to JSON. So I'm going to say const JSON response is resp.json, and let's return it for now. I really like to test my code, while building a bigger function. I like to test it as I go. So let's test this. It's a small function, but let's test it. So I'm going to say fetch page of, and let me make this one bigger again. I'm going to take frontend.row, and I'm going to take this one, and let's put a .then, and we're going to put here JSON, and let's console log JSON. Let's just do this. And we get an array with 30 objects, and each one is the pull request, which is closed. So now I realize we don't actually need the pull request, we just need their IDs. So let's say fetch closed pull request IDs. Fetch closed, let's do it, fetch page of closed pull request IDs. It's a bit longer, but you know what? Let's be specific. It doesn't hurt to write a title that's more specific. So I'm gonna do this, and here actually I'm gonna do return JSON response.map pr, and gonna do pr.id. And now we have an array with 30 IDs, which is great. Now I also want to handle pagination in this function. Or actually, you know what? Let's do something else before I handle pagination. What happens if the username or the repo doesn't exist? So then I expect to get a 404. So let's do if resp.status is 404. I'm going to return an empty array. And let's test it. So I'm going to do here does not exist. And we should get an empty array. That's good. That's good. Now, let me just comment this because I don't want it to run a lot because the GitHub API limits free calls. So let's just do this. And the next thing I want to do is handle pagination. So I need to know, I want this function not only to give me the IDs, but I would like it to also give me the next page if it exists. And now the question is, how do we get the next page, right? So let me just go back here to the GitHub API. And we have here an URL using pagination. So I'm going to go here, and we can see that we need to use link headers. When a response is paginated, we'll include a link header. And oh yeah, this is it. So this is the link header, and it's going to tell us if we have a next page or a previous page or stuff like that. So you can see here we have rel prev. So this is the previous page, rel next, and this is the URL to the next page. And we also have a rel last. So it gives us the URL of the last page and of the first page. And we don't really care about this. We just care about the next. And let's look at this value, and we can see it's separated by commas. So actually what we can do is a little bit of string parsing. So we're going to separate by commas. We're going to find this part, and then we're going to extract the page from here. Okay, so this looks good. And let's actually, for this, go back here and let's create a new function. So I'm going to say function extract next page, and it's going to be link header, which is going to be a string. And this one is going to return, right? Returns a number or null. So let's actually go here. I'm going to copy this one because I want it here in the code. Okay, so this is like an example. Actually, you know what? I don't really like it. So let's just do it like this, and we have it here. Okay. So this is a possible link header. So what I want to do is let's split by comma, and then I'm going to find the part that has next, and then in that part, I'm going to do some regex matching, so some regular expression to find the page. So let's just do this. Const parts is link header dot split of comma. Const next part is parts.find part.includes, I think, or is it contains? I don't even know. We're going to see. Let's actually mdn contains. And yeah, it includes. So the string has includes, and we're going to have to include what? Rel equals next, right? And we can do single quotes here and don't do the escaping. Okay, so now we have the next part, and we're going to do it like this. If next part is undefined, so we didn't find, return null. Otherwise, we want to do some string matching. So I want to find this. So I want to find like what's after this equal. So I'm going to do let's do it like this. Const match is next part dot matches, I think. And let's, if we still have the string prototype, I can go here and I think it's something match. Match method retrieves the results of matching the string against a regular expression. And that's exactly what we need. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say match of, and then we get the regular expression. So it's going to be what? Page equals, and then we're going to have a number. So 0, 9 plus, or actually I can do D. I think D is from decimal. So this is a decimal, and then we're going to get a number, and it's going to be at least one time, and it's going to be multiple times. Now, the match can be null, I think. So let's go here. Return type, null if no matches are found. So it's going to be null if there are no matches. So we got to handle this scenario. So I'm going to do if match is null, return null. Otherwise, return match of, I think, 1. Because we have here, we put the parentheses. So this tells the match function, hey, we're interested in that value that you have here. So match of 0 is going to be the whole match. So all of this, what finds to match this. And then match of 1 is going to be just the first parentheses. And again, I don't really like to write code in the dark. So let's actually test it. So I'm going to say, let's do console log extract of, and let's just put some random string here, and it's going to be null. And let's just put here this string that we have it. So I'm going to do backticks, and then we're going to put this string, and it's still null. And I think it's still null because we need to put here the flag from global. So I think it needs to be like this. No? Okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of good it's failing live because we can like debug it together and see how I would handle this. So first thing I want to do is, okay, do I have a next part? So let me just console log next part. And I have it. So that's great. So then we need to match page equal, and then we have a D plus. And then I want to say, okay, the match is going to be null. So let me just, I think the match is null. Let's console log that. Okay, it's null. We get it 2 times. So then why is this not working? Okay, so after a little bit of debugging, I figured it out. So the first thing we need to do is actually, we need to do 2 things. So the first one is we need to remove this G flag. Now, according to the documentation, if the G flag is used, all results matching the complete regular expression will be returned, but capturing groups are not included. And we want the capture groups, right? We only care about the number there. So I'm going to remove this. And the second bug I had, which was a little bit silly, is I have to escape this D character. Because actually, it's actually going to look for the D letter. And now you can see here in the console log, we get 4. But this is not a number, it's a string. So let's do a plus before. All right. So now that this function works, let me just remove the console logs and some empty spaces from here, right? We can leave the text here. Now what I want to do is actually use it here in this function. So instead of returning an array of IDs, I wanted to return an object with 2 properties. So I'm going to return like this, return. And IDs is going to be this. And then I also want to return next page. And next page is going to be the result of calling this function. So I'm going to say extract next page of resp.headers.getLink. And if this doesn't exist, so get is going to give me a string. Okay, so this should work actually, I think. So let's call this function. And we get an empty array. And something's a bit fishy. Because let's remove this console log. And let me just refresh here the editor. Maybe something's stuck. Oh, okay, this doesn't exist. But then why? Oh, yeah. Because I have this return here. So this one also needs to go like this. And we have no next page. So this looks legit. And now I have here some owner, I mean, the username that doesn't exist. Let's change it and we get, okay, next page is 2. That's nice. So now let's do per page, actually pages, let's do 100 and per page 10. And we should get empty array next page null. That's correct because this page doesn't exist. So now this looks legit. And you might be wondering, come on, man, are we gonna solve the function we wanted to solve? And yeah, we're gonna solve it right now. So we have this function that fetches a page of pull requests IDs and gives me an object with the IDs and the next page if it exists. Then we wrote this function that parses the link header and gives me the next page as a number or null. And now finally, we gotta put all of those together. So I know I have multiple pages. So we're gonna have to do like a while. So let's do let IDs of closed PRs is empty array. And then I'm gonna say let page is, actually next page is 1. And we're gonna do, and I know usually it's not okay to do a while with like a fetching, but you know, in this scenario, we're gonna consider it okay. So I'm gonna do while next page is different than null. And we're gonna fetch this function. So I'm gonna say the IDs and next page, and here, actually let's rename this to current page, or let's do this page to fetch because I don't want it to have the same name as next page. So this one is gonna be fetch page of closed pull requests of username repo. Now, what page we want? Well, page to fetch, and how many per page? And if I remember from here, it said the maximum is 100. So let's just do 100 because we want to make as few requests as possible. So we're going to do this, and then I'm going to do page to fetch is equal to next page. So we're going to assign this one to this one. And then what I also need to do is IDs of closed PRs dot push IDs. And let me just refresh this. Did it enter a loop? I hope not. So we have this one. So we start with page 1. We're going to fetch this page. We get the IDs. We get the next page. We're going to reassign it and push the IDs here. While we still have a next page, we fetch another one, another one, another one. And finally, we're going to return IDs of closed PRs. So this looks legit. So let me just test it, right? So we have here the function. So let's just do fetch closed pull requests of frontend.row, and this one we don't need this, and I'm gonna uncomment it, and we should get something like 200 or something. And we get IDs is undefined. Oh yeah, we forgot the await, man. And we get 207, so that's good. Now let's try with, and I think that's good. Let's look at the example. So we have 7 here and then another 200. Yeah, so 207. Now let's try with a username that doesn't exist. We get an empty array, that's correct. So I think we're ready to test our function. I'm gonna comment this and let's test our solution. And we get can't access property split link header is null. So this means that we're passing a link header as null here. So I think if this get can return null. And let's actually search here on MDM. So I'm going to do headers. Actually, let's do fetch using the fetch API. And here we should have headers. And we have get, a string, or null if the header is not set. Correct. So if we don't have the header, it's going to return null. So let's do this. We're going to do an empty string. Now let's test our solution again. And voila, it works. Now, before I say goodbye, let's just go one more time through the exercise, and then I'm going to let you continue with the next. So we split this function into 3 parts. The first part is fetching just a page, right? The API is paginated, so we fetch just a page of closed pull requests. So we use the GitHub API, we fetch the pull requests from a repo with state closed, and this page, and we want this number of per page. Next, we treat if the status is 404. So if the repo doesn't exist or the username, something like that, is 404, so we're going to return an object with the ID is an empty string, an empty array, sorry, so we don't have any IDs, and there's no next page. If we have a result, then we're going to convert it to JSON, and we're going to get the IDs, but we're also going to get the next page if we have one. And how do we know where to get the next page from? Well, we looked at the GitHub API, here using pagination and REST API, and if you read this section using link headers, you can see that if there's a next page, we're gonna get a header like this with link that's gonna have here rel next, something like this. So we do some string parsing, nothing too fancy, to extract the number from here. Now, going back to our code, I decided to create a separate function for parsing this header, right? I don't want to do it here. Maybe we're going to reuse it or something like that. So this is a function that receives a link header and splits it by comma first, and then finds the part that has rel next. And at every point, we make sure that if something's undefined or null, we handle it correctly. So this function is going to return a number or null if there's no next page. And finally, going back to the start function, we start from page 1. We have a while, so we keep fetching pages because I don't know how many closed PRs are. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 500. I have no idea. So we have a while, and at every step we fetch the current page, and we fetch 100 because this is the maximum number GitHub will let us. And then we replace the page to fetch with the next page, which is going to be a number or null, and we push the IDs to this array we're going to use for result. Finally, when this is null, so we've arrived to the last page, then we just return them and voila. Now, I hope that makes sense, and I'm going to say goodbye here. Cheers, and see you in the next one.